My CEO called me close to midnight, and the first thing she said was, "You can still fix this." Kaisa. I did not answer right away. Her voice was tight. Nothing like the confident laugh she used in meetings. "We need to talk, now. I know you are still in the city, just tell me where you are." "Why?" I asked. A pause. Then, softer. "Because this is getting out of control." 3 weeks earlier, I had stood in her office and asked for a 5% raise. My salary had not changed since I was 45. I had said it calmly, with numbers and timelines laid out the way I always did. She had leaned back in her chair and laughed. "Maybe it is time to think about early retirement," she said, smiling as if she had made a harmless joke. Now that same woman was whispering into her phone in a Seattle parking garage. Careful not to sound desperate. "This is not how it was supposed to go," she said. "We can adjust things. Compensation, title, whatever you want." I finally spoke. "You told me to retire." "I was joking," she said quickly. "You know that. You are too smart to take that seriously." I looked at my phone and watched the seconds tick by. "You did not sound like you were joking." Another pause. I could hear her breathing. "The board is asking questions," she said. "Clients are nervous. You know how these things spiral." "I do," I said. Her voice sharpened. "Do not do this out of spite." "This is not spite," I replied. "This is me listening." Silence stretched between us, heavy and unfamiliar. For years, I had been the one filling gaps, explaining systems, calming people down. Tonight, she had nothing left to offer except urgency. "Kaisa," she said, using my name like an anchor. "You are making a mistake." I ended the call without answering. As I lowered the phone, my hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I would feel angry or afraid. Instead, I felt clear. Clear about what had started 3 weeks ago with a laugh and a suggestion that I had outlived my usefulness. I started the car and drove home, already knowing that tomorrow I would have to revisit that moment in her office. When everything quietly changed, the story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Her Revenge. It is inspired by real workplace dynamics, but the characters, companies, and events are imagined. Each story stands on its own, carrying a different message about dignity, power, and the cost of underestimating someone who has finally decided to stop shrinking. 3 weeks earlier, I sat across from my CEO with my hands folded on the conference table and my voice steady. "My salary has not changed since I was 45, I said. "I am asking for a 5% adjustment." She did not answer right away. She scanned the paper in front of her as if she were reading it for the first time, even though she already knew every number on it. Then she laughed. Not a surprise laugh, not an awkward one. It was relaxed, confident, like she had just heard something charmingly unrealistic. "Kaisa," she said, leaning back. "You know how competitive things are right now." "I do," I replied. "That is why I kept this modest." She laughed again, softer this time. "At your level, 5% is not modest. It is expensive." I kept my tone even. "My responsibilities have increased. The security framework, the migration oversight, the incident response protocols. I am carrying more than I was 5 years ago." She waved a hand. "That is true for everyone. It is not reflected in my pay," I said. She tilted her head, studying me. "You are very good at what you do. No one is questioning that." Her smile tightened. "But the board is focused on the future. Hungry talent, adaptability." "I have adapted," I said. "I have led every transition this company survived." She laughed again, sharper now. "That is exactly my point." I felt my stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said carefully, "that maybe it is time to think about early retirement." The word hung between us. "I am 50, I said. She shrugged. "Which is not young in this industry." I waited for her to soften it. She did not. "This is not personal," she added. "It is just reality." I gathered my papers. Slowly. "Then this conversation is not about 5%. Her smile returned, relieved. "I am glad you understand." I stood. "I understand more than you think." She nodded, already glancing at her screen. "We will talk again." I walked out knowing she believed the matter was settled. She had laughed because she already knew the answer. The first meeting I was excluded from happened 2 days after that conversation. I found out because Mark from Product leaned over my desk and said, "Did you already review the new architecture deck?" "There is a new deck," I asked. He hesitated. It was discussed yesterday. Strategy sync. I assumed you were there. I was not invited. I said, later that afternoon, my manager stopped by. It was a small session, he said quickly. Nothing you needed to worry about. I designed the system they are restructuring, I replied. He smiled the way people do when they want the conversation to end. We are just thinking forward. Forward turned out to mean younger. At the next all hands, a junior engineer named Tyler walked on stage and presented a security workflow I recognized line by line. My workflow, he spoke confidently, clicking through slides with my decisions translated into buzzwords. Afterward, I said, "You did well, thanks," he said. I did not realize how complex this was until I tried to explain it. Who helped you prepare? I asked. He looked uncomfortable. They said you were busy. Busy became the explanation for everything. When the system stalled during a weekend rollout, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Kisa, my manager said, "We need you, now." I thought Tyler owned that system. I said, "He does." My manager replied, "But you understand it. I fixed the issue in 90 minutes. No one followed up. No one mentioned my name in the postmortem. That Monday, I ran into the CEO near the elevators. "You handled the outage well," she said. Not slowing down. "Thank you," I replied. I did not realize I was still on call. She smiled. Experience does not disappear overnight. That was when it settled in. I was no longer someone they planned with. I was someone they leaned on quietly, then stepped around. The praise was private, the credit was public, and the direction was clear. The laughter in her office had not been casual. It had been instructional. That night, I opened the drawer I had not touched in months. Inside was a stack of notebooks and a slim external drive. Nothing fancy, no company logos, no asset tags. Just my handwriting, my files, my timestamps. I plugged the drive into my personal laptop and pulled up a folder labeled Home Lab. The dates went back years, late nights, weekends. Small experiments that turned into solutions because no one else had time to think that slowly. My phone buzzed. A message from my manager. "Can you send over the logic you used for the failover last year? The team is trying to recreate it," I typed back. "Which version? The one that actually worked?" He replied. I stared at the screen. That version had never lived on a company machine. Years ago, when the first prototype saved a rollout, I had walked into a meeting and said, "I built something at home. It might help." The CTO at the time had smiled. "You are a team player, Kesa. Just drop it into the repo. No contract, no transfer, no discussion." I scrolled through commit notes, each one marked after midnight. I remembered telling myself it did not matter. That recognition was coming. That loyalty would even things out. My sister called while I was still staring at the screen. "You sound quiet," she said. "I am realizing something," I replied. "That sounds dangerous," she said gently. "I gave them work I never sold." She paused. "Did they ever ask to buy it?" "No," I said. "They just assumed." Another message came in, this time from the CEO's assistant. "She wants a copy of the documentation you mentioned last quarter." I set the phone face down. For the first time, the thought did not scare me. It steadied me. I was not angry. I was awake. All those years I had believed I was being generous. What I had really been was careless with myself. I closed the laptop without sending anything. Tomorrow, I would decide what stayed shared and what did not. Tonight, I finally understood the difference. The attorney introduced herself as Marlene Cho and spoke without hesitation, which unsettled me more than bad news would have. "You developed these components on your own time?" she asked. "Yes." "Using your own equipment?" "Yes." "And there is no written assignment transferring ownership to your employer?" "No," I said. "They never asked." She nodded once. "Then you own them." I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "Even if they used the ideas." "Use is not ownership," Marlene said. "Permission without purchase is not a sale." I slid a notebook across the table. These were shared informally, years ago. She flipped a few pages. "Dates are clear, development notes are yours. The risk is not legality. The risk is consequence, which is, they will be angry," she said. "They will feel betrayed. They may threaten, but they will not win in court." I stared at the grain in the table. What if I do nothing? Marlene met my eyes. Then nothing changes. I thanked her and left with a thin folder under my arm and a heavier weight in my chest. That night, at home, I opened my email and searched a name I had ignored for a long time. Evan Brooks, Bellevue, Chief Technology Officer at a competitor we pretended not to watch. His message was dated 4 months earlier. Kaisa, I have followed the evolution of your company's systems for years. Some patterns are unmistakable. If you ever want to talk about building something the right way, my door is open. I read it twice. My phone rang. It was my manager. Quick question, he said. Do you still have access to that prototype you mentioned? Yes, I said. Great. We will need it tomorrow. I will think about it, I replied. There was a pause. Think about it, I said I would think about it. After I hung up, I stared at Evan's message again. The fear was there, sharp and real. So was something else. A line I had never crossed, finally visible. I closed my laptop. The call would come next. Evan Brooks did not start the meeting with a pitch. He looked at me and said, "Before we talk about roles or numbers, I need to be clear about something." I nodded. "Go ahead." "We are not asking you to bring anything that belongs to your employer," he said. "No repositories, no internal documentation, no shortcuts." I felt my shoulders loosen without my permission. "That matters to me." "It should," Evan replied. "What we want is how you think. The decisions you make when no one is watching. The systems you build before anyone tells you what they need." I said nothing. I was not used to being given space. He continued. "We noticed patterns, architecture choices that kept working long after trends changed. That does not come from committees. It comes from living with the consequences," I said. Evan smiled. "Exactly." Another engineer joined us. Priya, head of platform security. She slid a document across the table. "This outlines authorship, your name on what you create, clear boundaries on what is yours and what becomes ours." I scanned the page. "You included that voluntarily." "We learned the hard way not to assume," she said. "Experience leaves when it feels taken." Evan leaned forward. "We are offering a senior role with authority, not just responsibility. Base compensation of $340,000, equity that vests over time. But more importantly, control over what you build." I set the paper down. I was laughed at for asking for 5%. "I know," Evan said. "That is why we did not start there." There was no rush, no interruption, no one checking their phone while I spoke. "When I share an idea," I said slowly, "I need to know it will not be taken and reframed without me." Priya met my eyes. "Then do not share it until you are ready. We will wait." That was the moment it clicked. They were not rescuing me. They were making room. When the meeting ended, Evan stood and said, "Take your time. We are not going anywhere." As I walked out, my phone buzzed with a message from my current manager. "Did you find that prototype yet?" I did not answer. I already knew where I belonged next. I submitted my resignation on a Tuesday morning. The CEO called me into her office within 10 minutes. "This feels sudden," she said, folding her hands on the desk. "You did not mention you were unhappy." "I did," I replied. 3 weeks ago." She smiled politely. "That conversation was informal. It was clear," I said. She picked up the letter and skimmed it. "You are giving 2 weeks' notice." "Yes." She looked up. "May I ask why?" I met her gaze. "I am taking your advice." Her brow furrowed. "My advice about early retirement," I said. "From this company." For a moment. She looked almost amused. Then the humor faded. "That is not what I meant," she said carefully. "It is what you said." She leaned back. "You are in the middle of critical systems. This timing is unfortunate." "I was told timing was a business reality," I replied. Her voice tightened. "You know how much we rely on you." "I know," I said. That is why the laughter surprised me. She stood and walked to the window, then back. "This does not have to be final. I have made my decision." She studied me as if recalculating, "Is this about money?" "It was about respect," I said. Silence filled the room. "We can revisit compensation," she said. "Title as well." I shook my head. "You already revisited my future." Her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at the screen and turned it face down. "You are making a mistake," she said. "Lower now. I am making a boundary." She exhaled slowly. "If you walk out, you will not find it easy elsewhere." "I already have," I said. That was when her posture changed. Not anger, not offense. Something closer to alarm. "We will talk again," she said. "Yes," I replied. We will. I left her office without raising my voice, without rushing. For the first time, the joke was no longer hers to tell. The call came 2 days after my resignation went public. Kaisa, the CEO said, without greeting, we need to reset this conversation. I am listening, I said. There was a disruption last night, she continued. A client rollout was delayed. Nothing catastrophic, but she paused. Your absence was noticed. I am still employed, I said. For another 10 days. That is not what I meant, she replied quickly. You know how these systems are. They are complex. They are, I said. That is why I built them the way I did. She exhaled. We can fix this. I can authorize immediate changes, such as a promotion, she said, expanded scope. A compensation adjustment well beyond what you asked for. 15%, possibly more. I waited, and, she added, a retention bonus. We can structure it over the next year. I asked for 5%. I said, yes, she replied, sharper now. And I laughed. I should not have. It was just a joke. The word landed flat. A joke, I repeated. I did not think you would take it personally, she said. You know how tense things were that week. I remember, I said, you told me to think about early retirement. That was not serious. She insisted. You know I value you. Then answer me this. I said, my voice steady. If I had stayed quiet, would any of this be happening right now? Silence. I did not think so. I continued. You did not call to apologize. You called because something broke. Her voice dropped. You are putting people at risk. I am not responsible for decisions made after I warned you, I replied. She tried again. Name your number. This was never about numbers. Then what do you want? She asked. I spoke slowly. I want to work where my future is not a punchline. She did not respond. When the call ended, there was no relief in my chest, only certainty. Whatever fear had entered her voice did not belong to me. On my first day at the new company, Evan gathered the team and said one sentence that set the tone. Nothing ships with Kaisa's name missing from it. No applause, no speeches, just an expectation. Priya slid a document across the table. This is the implementation plan. Clean room rebuild. Everything traced. Everything reviewed. I nodded. I will walk you through the logic before we touch anything. That is the point, she said. The work moved quickly, but not carelessly. When an engineer disagreed, they said so out loud. When I pushed back, it was discussed, not overridden. No one rushed me to simplify something that should not be simplified. 2 weeks in, a sales director stopped me in the hallway. We closed a client because your framework answered questions we usually dodge. It answers them because it was built to, I said. Meanwhile, my old phone kept lighting up. A former colleague texted, do you have time to explain why the failover keeps looping? I replied. I no longer have access. Another message came from my manager. We are struggling to document some decisions you made years ago. I stared at the screen, then typed. Those decisions were explained in meetings you stopped inviting me to. He did not respond. Industry chatter picked up faster than I expected. A vendor asked Evan during a call, did you really hire the architect behind that system? Evan glanced at me. We did more than hire her. We listened. At my former company, listening came too late. A recruiter forwarded me an article that mentioned my old employer's delayed rollout and unexpected gaps in institutional knowledge. No names were printed, but the implication was clear. That afternoon, Priya leaned over my desk. They are feeling it now. I know, I said. She studied me. Do you feel guilty? No. I replied. I feel accurate. When experience leaves quietly, it does not explode. It simply stops holding things together. And once that happens, everyone notices what had been doing the work all along. The CEO did not leave in a dramatic way. There was no scandal, no headline with her name in bold letters. The board announced an internal audit. Strategic negligence, failure to safeguard core assets, poor succession planning, clean language for a deep mistake. I heard about it from a former colleague who called me late one evening. She is out, he said, effective immediately. I did not celebrate. I thanked him and ended the call. A week later, Evan stopped by my desk. Your name is on the patent filing, he said, handing me a printed draft, lead architect. I looked at it longer than necessary. No footnotes, no omissions. At the next company meeting, Priya introduced me simply. Kaisa built this. No qualifiers, no jokes. Months passed. The work continued, stable, thoughtful, sustainable. Then, one afternoon, an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. Kaisa, the voice said, tired now. It is me. I did not respond. I know I should not be calling, she continued, but I wanted you to know. I finally understand what I lost. Silence. I treated people like costs, she said quietly. I was wrong. I listened without interrupting. If you ever want to talk, she added, I would like that. I ended the call without replying. Later that evening, Evan asked, do you want me to block that number? No, I said. She already said everything she needed to say. Recognition came without noise. Respect arrived without negotiation. My work spoke in places where laughter once lived. The punishment was not humiliation, it was irrelevance. The life lesson I carry forward is simple and earned. When experience is mocked instead of honored, it does not disappear, it moves. And wherever it goes, it takes stability, clarity, and progress with it.